Matt, who do we have attending with us today?
We've got Ralph Weingarten from Falk and Foster, as well as Jeremy Holt from Chase Real Estate Services. They're two representatives for the cell tower public hearing.
Great.
Gentlemen, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Is the public able to access as well?
Yeah, let me check. We have 5 participants. We do not have any attendees as of right now, but we're live and it's being recorded.
Thank you, sir.
So,
All right, this time I'll call the Caswell County Planning Board meeting to order, the date of July 26, 2022. Thank everyone for being here. Hope everyone is well. I have approval of the agenda, and Mr. Hoagland just mentioned this. There's no objection. Since we do have guests in the audience today, maybe we could switch unfinished business and new business, so we can go ahead and start with the new business first with our attendees. Any objection to that? All right. Any other revisions to the agenda? Hey, Mr. Petit. How you doing, sir?
agendas on the table.
Hearing no objections or modifications, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Harris. Do we have a second? Mr. Thompson, all those in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Next, we have the approval of the June 28, 2022 meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review? I'd like to thank Amy for preparing these minutes. Appreciate all your hard work. Hearing no discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes for May 2022 as is. Motion by Mr. Daniel. Second by Harris. All those in favor, let it know by saying aye. Aye. Next, we have public comments. Anyone like to speak for public comments today? That'll be the time.
And Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, if you want to speak on the cell tower, then you are welcome to do that during the public hearing.
Okay, I'm Ruby Sargent Kovac, and the access comes in on my property.
Ms. Hogan, are we going to speak during the public hearing on that?
If it's cell tower related, that would be the time for those comments. If it's a general public comment, that would be now.
Ms.
No.
Hogan, is this related to the cell tower?
Yes,
Could you wait 1 minute,
Okay.
please? We'll open the public hearing and then you can address the board. Thank you. All right. Next, we have new business, the wireless communication tower public hearing. Chair recognizes Mr. Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Applicant Cellco Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless and through their representative Falk and Foster, are proposing to develop a 300-foot self-supported lattice tower for a roughly 103-acre parcel of land on David Sarton Road in the Providence area. The specific tower location would be in the middle of an agricultural plot of land on the western side of North Carolina Highway 86 North. The site is approximately 9/10 of a mile south of the intersection of Highway 86 and Park Springs Road, and 8/10 of a mile north of the intersection of Highway 86 and Pearly Church Road. In addition to the engineering drawings that you have before you today, the applicants also furnished an authorization and co-location compliance letter, a copy of the redacted lease, FCC license list, an FCC RF emission compliance checklist, FCC ARS registration search results, a map of RF coverage plots both before and after, and a fall zone letter, and I'll be glad to display any of those documents during on the screen today if you wish. The applicants also requested that they be exempted from the vegetative screening requirements of the ordinance, giving the remote location of the tower. I visited the site Thursday, July 7th, 2022, and found that the vegetative buffer requirements of the ordinance would serve no useful purpose. And I issued a letter to the applicants on July 11th, exempting them from these vegetative requirements per my authority in section 9.26.3.3 of the Unified Development Ordinance. I can also provide a copy of that letter if you'd like to review it today. I also want to note that a public hearing notice ran twice in the Caswell Messenger newspaper, both on July 13th and 20th, and signs were posted at the property, both at the site of the proposed new easement to the tower from Highway 86 and at the David Certain Road entrance from Foster Road. Notification letters were also mailed to the owners of the property under review, as well as all adjoining and adjacent property owners. And these actions satisfy the public notice requirements of subsection 9.28.2.2 of the ordinance. At the conclusion of today's public hearing, the planning board shall take one of the following actions. 1, to approve the application as submitted. 2, to approve the application with conditions or modifications. 3, to refer the application for additional information or neighborhood input. Or 4, to deny the application in writing. On the webinar today, Mr. Chairman, we have Senior Zoning Specialist Ralph Weingarten with Falk and Foster and Jeremy Holt with Chase Real Estate Services. You will need a motion to officially go into a public hearing to process this issue, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have before that vote or hearing from the applicants.
That's a good point, Mr. Hoagland. I think now would be the appropriate time to enter into the public hearing, but we'll need a motion to go into the public hearing. Motion by Mr. Harris. To enter into the public hearing, do we have a second? Second, Mr. Daniel. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Public hearing begins, and Mr. Hoagland, from the administrative perspective, does the application meet all the proper criteria as it relates to the local ordinance?
Yes, sir. Based on my review, they have satisfied all of the requirements of Article 9, Part 3 of the wireless tower ordinance. I would even go as far as to say this is probably the most thorough application and documentation that I've received in my 4 years as county planner for a new cell tower.
Fellow members, any questions for Mr. Hoagland? Hearing none.
Let me ask this. Tell me exactly where is this tower going to be? I hear Park Spring, I hear Falls Road.
Well, the address is wrong. That's what I wanted to address today.
Okay.
It may be a little bit hard to describe.
I know where Park Springs is, I know where 86 is, I know where Foster Road is.
So it's approximately halfway between Park Springs Road to the north and Pearly Church Road to the south. There's the auto body garage as you're driving north over on the left-hand side, Plunkett's, I believe it is.
Yeah.
So it's just on the south side of the bridge and a creek across from Plunkett's, but it's way back in the off the road on 103 acre parcel. So it's pretty well isolated into the interior of that property. But geographically speaking, it's roughly halfway between Park Springs Road to the north and Pearly Church Road to the south.
Mr. Weingarten or Mr. Holt, would either one of you like to address the board at this time?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board. My name is Ralph Weingarten from Falk and Foster at 678 Front Avenue Northwest, Suite 255 in Grand Rapids, Michigan, 49504. I'm representing the applicant Cellco Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless. And as was mentioned, also with me today is Jeremy Holt from Chase Real Estate Services. That's the site acquisition company that located the site for Verizon. I just want to thank you for your time considering this application this afternoon and for your accommodation through Zoom. Thanks also to Mr. Hoagland for his work and guidance on this throughout the process. This site will provide much needed service in this area of Caswell County. It will serve the daily personal and business needs of the community, support the county economy, and assist first responders in their protection of the public health and safety. In addition to Verizon, we've also designed this site to hold at least 4 additional future providers. Given that there are not other towers in the area, we expect there to be a need in the future, in addition to Verizon, for some of the other carriers to come on this tower as well. As was mentioned, this facility is designed in line with the performance standards in your ordinance. It's as was mentioned, fairly isolated on the property. The setbacks are 465 feet 11 inches from the north line, 717 feet 6 inches from the east line, 846 feet 11 inches from the west line, and 1,211 feet 4 inches from the south line. It's in a cattle pasture with mature wooded vegetation around the area, so it is screened and isolated from surrounding zoning and issues. In our view, it offers an excellent opportunity to provide essential wireless infrastructure for this part of the county in an appropriate location. As was mentioned by Ms. Ruby, I think the address that was mentioned in the application was David Sarton Road, which I think is the parcel address, but the access is actually coming off of North Carolina Highway 86. And that comes across the corner of her property and then onto this parcel. So that'll be and we have applied for the North Carolina Department of Transportation driveway permit for that location. Our architectural engineering firm, Kimley Horn, is handling that application, and they have started that process with the State Transportation Department. So we respectfully ask for your approval of this application, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have or any members of the public might have. And I appreciate your time again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weingarten. If the application is approved, can you give us a timeline for when we can anticipate construction?
Usually once we finish the real estate side of it, which includes the zoning approval, it gets routed over to the construction side of things with Verizon, and they work with their contractors to get bids and fit it into a construction schedule. So it's always hard to nail down an exact schedule, but likely sometime later this year.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Weingarten?
2 questions. What's the radius of this cell tower, and can you show us the gaps that it fills?
Yes, we did present an exhibit which has before and after coverage plots from Verizon.
Mr. Weingarten, I can pull that up.
Yeah, okay, yep, it's one up from there. Yeah, tower coverage plot map is the file that you're looking for. And Verizon has a site to the southeast in Yanceyville, and this builds off of that one.
I had the wrong thing. Here we go. So this is a current coverage map.
Yep, that's the current coverage map, and then the next slide shows it with the site on here.
Yeah, so that's the proposed site location, Mr. Foster, to answer your earlier question. And then this is what the ending result coverage would look like.
Matt, could you zoom into the location?
Sure. More?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the county line to the north. So the site location is about halfway between Yanceyville and the county line, and along North Carolina Highway 86 there.
So what's the radius? Is it 3 miles, 5 mile radius for this tower?
I would say it varies. The signal strength varies. The core coverage area is probably 3-4 miles, and then as you get farther away into more fringe areas, it just kind of depends on the topography and maybe what kind of building you're in as to the quality of your signal. But for certain, people within 3-4 miles will have good service in all all circumstances. And then farther out from that, it's just a lot of variables, topography, whether you're in a car or a home or a brick building, those kind of things. But definitely if you're in a car or a vehicle, a lot farther out than that.
All right, any other questions from Mr. Weingarten? Thank you, sir. Mr. Holt, you're also present. Would you like to address the board?
I think I'm good. I appreciate your time, Mr. Chairman of the Planning Board. I think Ralph did a great job and answered and fulfilled everything that we needed to accomplish.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir. Ms. Hovatter, you've been waiting very patiently, so
Yes.
now's your time.
All right, my concern is about the correct address. It is NC Highway 86 North, Providence, North Carolina. It is not the David Sarton Road, which comes off the Foster Road and dead ends into the middle of the cow pasture. Should any developments occur, which is now unlikely with the tower there, because people are not going to want to build a house nearby. But as you know, the county tax money helps the fire departments. Anything revenue from that land needs to go to Providence Fire Department, not to Yanceyville Fire Department. And it really needs to be the correct address in all of your correspondence and on your maps.
Thank you, Ms. Hovatter. I think Mr. Weingarten mentioned that. Mr. Weingarten, can that issue be resolved?
Yes, sir. We're in the process of getting the driveway permit from North Carolina Department of Transportation, and we will ensure that all access, both for construction and later for operation of the tower, comes off of that entry point. And I'll work with Mr. Hoagland too, just to make sure that all county records reflect that location and the correct address for that location.
Thank you, Mr. Weingarten. Ms. Hovatter, did you hear that?
Yes, just so it's Providence, not Yanceyville. And in addition, this tower, it was my understanding it was going to be big enough, large enough, and add enough to it that it will also have Danvers Casino. So, you know, the North End certainly needs, and certainly North School, plenty of access to Wi-Fi and all this information, and helps these young people learn more. But Danvers is going to benefit from this as well. Now, whether they're going to give you anything out of it, I don't know. But hopefully our land value in some parts of that part of the county will definitely increase as people develop, move out, or whatever. Now, my land, which at one point I thought about developing, will now be a cow pasture for the rest of the time, because I don't think anybody wants $1 million house out there near town. But so it's not going to be Eagle Oak Estates, it's just going to continue to be cow pasture.
Thank you, Ms. Hovatter. Anyone else in the public that would like to address the board, now would be the appropriate time. Okay. All right, and so I'll circle back around to you, Mr. Hoagland. I think you'd already mentioned that the requirements as it relates to the local ordinance have been met. Are there any additional actions that need to be taken?
I'll just mention a couple of things that have already been touched on. If and when the board approves the tower, there's just gonna be a couple small follow-ups from an administrative perspective, which they've already begun. They'll be required to get an NCDOT driveway permit. I know they've already begun that process. And then they will be required to obtain an address from our E911 department. And they coordinate very closely with our tax department and emergency services and all the rest. And so I would assume at that point, the address issue would be totally ironed out on the county level.
And at the address, in the past, the guardrail stopped properly so that we could bring our cattle trucks and all out that gate. Last 2 times, they have taken over half of the entrance with the extension of the guardrail. Actually, they've caused 2 accidents by putting it where they did. So that guardrail needs to curve back around so that you can clearly get in and out of that gate, especially big equipment building this. And if they need a hay baler or a cattle trailer or whatever to go in there, they need to be able to get through the gate.
Thank you, Ms. Hovatter. All right, any discussion from the board?
So I don't think we're proposing any changes to the application.
You may, again, I'll read for you what the options that you have as the ordinance spells out. You may approve the application as submitted. You may approve the application with conditions or modifications. The ordinance does detail what constitutes a reasonable condition or modification. You may refer the application for additional information or neighborhood input, or number 4, you may deny the application, in which case the applicants would have the opportunity to appeal.
The address information that's been discussed, that's not a modification. In other words.
Correct. That's the part of normal procedure after approval or denial. Basically, just after approval, they would be required to coordinate with the E911 to get a proper address. It's just a matter of course for pretty much any development.
I'm just trying to make sure when we make a motion, then if we needed to apply, it's still acceptable.
The address part sounds real serious, particularly to her, I'm sure, to anybody else.
Yes, because Providence Fire Department will have to come, not Yanceyville. So if there's any money, tax money, it should go to that fire department.
Got to emphasize that the address needs to be taken care of.
All right. What is the pleasure of the board?
A motion to approve as application submitted.
So, motion by Mr. Oakley, second by Mr. Daniel, to approve the application as presented, knowing that the address issues will be taken care of during the permitting process. Motion and second to approve. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Yep, you too.
Next, under new business, the Hillbrook Cheat Major Subdivision. Mr. Hogan, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you will give me a moment, I'm going to share a different document on my screen here. And do you mind passing these out? Several of you received these subdivisions in the mail, but those of you who received documents via email did not. So they are here for your review.
And all that file.
Yes, sir. That's it for cell towers. Ready if you are, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr. Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The preliminary subdivision that you have before you today contains a proposal for 8 new lots along the private gravel roads, Easy Street Extension and Moon Creek Lane in Providence, North Carolina. All major subdivisions, which are those categorized as containing 7 or more lots, must receive approval from the planning board in accordance with section 8.7 of the UDO. As the ordinance requires, the developer and surveyor have conducted a pre-application meeting with the planning department and presented sketch plans of this preliminary plat. The subdivider has paid the necessary fees associated with review, and the surveyor has submitted the necessary number of preliminary plats for your review today. For those of you who received an email of this document, you'll now find the 24x36 paper copy on your desk. The subdivider has also already installed the necessary road upgrades, which I inspected on Friday, June the 24th, and found them to meet and exceed the standards for subdivisions of this type. He has also submitted a maintenance agreement for all future lot owners, and I have found it to be in compliance with all the provisions of UDO subsection 9.56.11.1.7 entitled maintenance. Finally, in my review capacity as subdivision administrator, I have found that all lot size, dimension, right-of-way, layout, and other subdivision requirements have been met, and it is submitted today for your approval. As you make your determination, please note that section 8.7.4.2.3 of the UDO gives the planning board the following options. Number 1, to approve the plan as is. Number 2, to approve the plan with conditions. Or number 3, to disapprove of the plan. Any determination must be made within 45 days of initial consideration today. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about the proposed subdivision.
Again, Mr. Hogan, just circling back around, based upon staff perspective and local rules, appears to you that it's met all the requirements.
Yes, sir. And typically on subdivisions of this type, it's rare that we get a major subdivision, being that of 7 or more lots. But the main things that we look for are lot size, the ability for the lots, once they're developed, to achieve setbacks, lot width and layout, things of that nature. And perhaps most importantly, that the standard of the road be brought up to the proper standard for subdivisions of this type. In Caswell County, 9 is kind of the magic number. If you hit that, then you've got to pave a road into a subdivision. But as you can see here, the applicant is proposing for 8 new lots. That requires them to gravel the road of 6 inches depth of gravel, and that it be at least 18 feet wide, which is an NCDOT requirement for subdivisions of this type as well. I went out and measured, as I mentioned, I went out, I believe it was at the end of June on the 24th. And without a doubt, all portions of the road were at least 18 feet wide. And some portions they were as wide as 20 or 22 feet, with a very solid, consistent bed of gravel throughout the entire subdivision. One thing that is unique to this is you do have a couple of lots that extend off of this right of way. And one thing that the applicant told me about was either there wasn't a good consistent record of this right of way existing, this easement to this lot, or that it was kind of ambiguous as to whether or not that existed. So he actually gravelled that easement for that property owner as well, more or less as a sign of goodwill. The other requirement that needs to be met in these situations is that they draft a road maintenance agreement, so the future owners of these lots are obligated to pitch in for the maintenance. That was submitted, the final draft of that was submitted to me last week, and I found it to be in perfect accordance with the ordinance. If this is approved, then I would have to sign off on the final plat, and that maintenance agreement will have to be recorded at the same time the final plat is.
Both the owners were here, but I see Donnie Powell. Did the owners submit a letter, or did they give input?
No, other than the documentation that's required by the ordinance, they haven't really submitted anything additional. If Donnie wants to weigh in on the well and septic feasibility, I think environmental health has already assessed these lots, and he may be able to speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, everything was good. I mean, they were good to go on our end.
This was submitted by Clint Gilbert.
That's correct. Clint and his wife, Tamiko Cheek. I will inform the board that they do plan to officially name this subdivision Easy Street Estates, which is technically a minor modification, which they're allowed to make after preliminary approval. So there will be a name change to the subdivision to that, but I don't see that as any reason to deny it or to hold up any of the approval process.
All right, discussion from the board.
Mr. Powell, did you survey each of these lots, and each has a septic site, a suitable septic site on them?
Yes. Yes, we evaluated the property. My staff did. I assisted them, but all of the sites do have approvals. And I think they have standing permits. Pretty sure all the permits have been written.
Thank you.
There are, I guess, 8 lots here. There's one in the middle column. What is that?
So that is labeled F because it is, that's the previous labeling from the most recent survey which created that lot. So lot F is not part of this survey, but it is a lot that currently exists. So you're certainly able, if you purchase land, you're certainly able to subdivide around an existing lot as long as all the other lots meet the minimum standard of the ordinance. And as I mentioned, these do with regards to lot size, shape, dimension, road upgrades, all the other things that you would look for in a major subdivision. These lots achieve that. They just happen to encircle that lot F
the reason I was asking, I wasn't familiar with the 9 lot requires some paved road or whatever, so I'm trying to understand how that would not be included in the 9, therefore requiring a paved.
Sure, that's a good question. So because the subdivider is not creating that lot, it's not included in the total number of new lots. So that's an existing lot, which is not included in the total number of new lots being created.
So the subdivider doesn't own that lot.
That's correct.
Lot F is still owned by the other. Mr. Governor.
I'm not, it looks like Lot F is owned by Julie Randolph and Kevin Callahan. As you can see over here, well. let's see. Over here, there's a note. Lot F.
That work with the maintenance on the road.
They would technically not need to sign on to the maintenance agreement because they're not part of the subdivision. They just happen to be kind of inside the subdivision. The reason that that lot exists and is fine in the way that it is because Caswell County allows for a simple easement to access no more than 2 lots on a private gravel easement. Once you go to a third new lot, then you've got to kick it up to the minor subdivision regulations of gravel. Once you go to the 9th lot, then you've got to do the paving. So there's always math in new lots being created versus gravel road standards in a lot of these multi-unit or multi-lot subdivisions that we're seeing.
So lot F is going to benefit from the road.
That's correct. Yeah, they'll benefit from the new access. But unless they voluntarily sign on, they will not be obligated to the new road maintenance agreement.
So number 9, 50.67 acres, what is that?
That is the remainder of the parent tract.
It's not gonna be. It's not gonna be, nothing gonna be put on there.
I'm not sure if anything will be put on there. It is not technically part of the subdivision calculation because it's larger than 10 acres. Any piece of property that's greater than 10 acres is exempt from subdivision regulations.
And that portion is still owned by Mr. Gilbert, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I believe that's correct.
Any further discussion?
I make a motion that we approve the Hill of Cheek major subdivision.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Motion by Mr. Foster to approve. Have a second. Second by Mr. Thompson. Been made to approve the Hillbrook Cheek major subdivision as presented. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Next, we'll move into unfinished business. Watershed Review Board pending appeals. I'm gonna have heard back from the planning board attorney about any updates.
Well, I had a very brief correspondence with him this morning. I sent him an email letting him know that we were prepared for another continuance, just as we've done every month this year. And he said that that was perfectly fine. He hadn't heard any updates. And so his expectation was a same continuance as we've done every month so far.
Okay, thanks for preparing this resolution, Mr. Hoagland. So I'll go ahead and read the motion. I move to adopt the resolution from the June 28th, actually. I move to adopt the resolution from the June 28th, 2022 Planning Board meeting as written with the following amendment. Now therefore be it resolved by the Castle County Watershed Review Board as follows. Watershed Review Board hearing with respect to the Sunrock appeals now scheduled to begin on July 26th, 2022 shall be and hereby is continued until the next Watershed Review Board meeting scheduled for 1 p.m. on Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022. So that's the motion. Second. Second. Second by Mr. Foster. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Next on unfinished business, the comprehensive plan discussion and review. Mr. Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the last planning board meeting, after discussing the comprehensive plan, the instruction to me was to basically summarize everything that the board had reviewed and approved so far, and more or less make that ready for final action. So let me make sure that this is going to come out on the right slide. I was afraid that might happen. Sorry, there's a lag between my computer and the screen here. If everybody can see that, I'll just kind of present it as this in this format.
Brad, would you mind zooming in just a little bit?
Yeah, let me see if I can do that. I've kind of made one really long presentation here, just to make sure I know where everything is. So here we go. Yep, there we go. Okay, so these are the summary recommendations for planning board meeting today, July 26, 2022. So these are your recommendations in total, as we've discussed. This is the summary of those recommendations over the last several meetings that we've had. And I'll just go through them briefly. Number one, to add Forestry Service contact information to Appendix A. Number two, I don't know why these are misnumbered. Number two, incorporate the 2020 census data into Section 2. 3, to amend the UDO to allow for a staff recommendation on all planning related items. 4, to add Chamber of Commerce contact information to Appendix A. 5, to strike out all potential ordinances from Section 4.5. 6, to create Section 4.6 education under issues, goals, and strategies. 7, for an annual pre-comprehensive plan review meeting with the county commissioners. And number 8, certain transportation upgrades or updates, which would be to add a center turn lane along the Highway 86 business corridor through Yanceyville, to prioritize a 86 bypass loop around the high school, and to emphasize reassessment and prioritization in light of the pending Danville casino. And I apologize, I'm not sure why those are misnumbered. You know, you always wrestle with PowerPoint numbering and bullets and all that stuff. So I'm not sure why there's a missing number 2 in there, but hopefully it won't stop us.
That's okay. So, Mr. Hogan, those are your recommendations. We obviously made a lot of changes, updates within the comprehensive plan.
Well, this is the summary of the updates. The board basically authorized me to go forward with. I don't have any recommendations in this process. I work at the pleasure of the board. So if this is the end of the road and this is what the board wants to send to the commissioners, I'm happy to do that. If you want to continue to deliberate, reassess, goals or priorities or anything that you want to do, I work at the pleasure of the board and I am happy to do it.
The only thing Chairman was, I'm fine with those changes that I did as a follow-up to our meetings last month. I drafted up a couple of letters just for clarification on what the potential agenda would be for this meeting with the board of commissioners. We can do that with the group, and also a letter about the transportation, just in terms of having that process review on what the county transportation plan is, and asking them to just have an assessment of this casino to see if they think there should be some reprioritizations as a result of that. I think unless someone does a traffic study, none of us really know if if changes are needed or not, but anyway, that would be the only other addition proposed to include the information forwarded to the commissioners, and, you know, those letters could go separately or get incorporated however the best be presented to the commission.
Mr. Hogan, do you have a way you can present those letters? And before we get to that, does anyone have any input or any potential changes to the planning board recommendations on the screen?
I might have trouble getting to it while my screen is shared, but if you give me a moment, I can. You have a way, Scott, to share this?
Can you do it? Yeah, you let me share.
You have got share capabilities?
I think you have to stop and then maybe.
Yeah, I stopped mine.
That would be the basic idea here. So basically just, you know, requesting an annual meeting. The timing of the meeting would be prior to the kickoff of our annual review. The purpose of the meeting is for the planning board to seek input and guidance from the board of commissioners on top priorities for the annual update. And the proposed agenda here would be as following, and obviously if anyone has any other ideas, we can incorporate that. But guidance from the board of commissioners on high priority updates to the comprehensive plan. Anything that would need to be updated in terms of issues, goals or strategies in section 4. If the board has any potential ordinances, new or changes to the existing that they would like the planning board to, you know, take up in the coming year or part of the comprehensive plan, and whatever data would be available in terms of reviewing, you know, trends with population or construction or whatever it might be. That would be an opportunity to discuss that. If there's, I think as a board, we could also look at, you know, frequency and how we want to try to capture community input from a survey standpoint in years where we have that. That could be additional information that could be shared. Whatever community input. There was quite a lot of community input received in the original comprehensive plan. I think it would be a good idea to do that periodically to try to get additional input from the community. So that would be the first step. So it's any additional thoughts or inputs. Okay, second letter is just a simple letter here. So basically just saying in light of the new casino, we would request a reevaluation of the county transportation plan. That's the last plan appears to be dated, if I pulled the right thing from our website, county website is dated 2018. And then there's also a table in the comprehensive plan that basically summarizes the proposals from the county transportation plan. So this letter is not proposing any specific changes. It's just giving an example of an assessment. So it's basically just asking for.
I've been wrong, but I've always thought the state evaluated that, not the county.
So from my understanding of the process, the state does do the revaluation, but a county can request an analysis. You know, Caswell County or the town of Yanceyville or whatever can say, can you please, you know, analyze traffic patterns in Yanceyville or in Caswell County, or people driving between Yanceyville and Danville, something of that nature. So if I understand correctly, that would be the gist of your proposal is that the planning board would be encouraging the commissioners to initiate that NCDOT analysis.
And I could be wrong about this as well, but I think, don't we have like a commissioner who's on this review board or something?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's typically that's a constant thing, even if the specific commissioner changes.
So in other words, I guess that commission, if the board of commissioners wanted to pursue this, then they would give this work item to that commissioner to take to that review board. And that's what I think that's
Correct.
Let's take it over. It's a transportation advisory board that is part of the Piedmont Triad Regional Council, Transportation. Whatever. And Alvin Foster, the mayor of Yanceyville, is chairman. I think he's still the chairman of that transportation advisory
I believe so.
for the region.
That would still have to be done by time study though, wouldn't it? That couldn't be just decided by the county.
Yeah, they have a prioritization system that I'm not perfectly familiar with, but Rockingham County submits their proposals and Alamance submits their proposals and as a group, they kind of vote and discuss prioritization. So my assumption would be that this type of a thing would fall in that prioritization schedule. Mr. Oakley's request, if I understand this correctly, is basically to say, in light of the new casino, please reprioritize the traffic patterns in Caswell County.
Or put that on the agenda on the DAB.
I can speak somewhat to that, Matthew. I was a part of the previous transportation planning that occurred back in 2018. And at that time, there was no mention of 86 was mentioned as that passing lane, 3-laning it from Yanceyville to Danville, but at that time, there was no mention of the casino at all. So even though the traffic patterns on 86 were well below its capabilities, I'm not sure that they still would be with the casino traffic.
Okay. Any comments or discussion from the board? Thank you, Mr. Oakley. Thank you, Mr. Powell. All right, so what will be the pleasure of the board? We spent several months reviewing the comprehensive plan and making updates. I remember specifically hearing Mr. Foster presented this about a lot of the goals have been met and setting new goals. Do we want to go ahead and recommend this to the board of commissioners at this point to let them review?
We have to make a motion, so there's no further discussion. So I'll make a motion that we present those changes as Matthew presented it along with the others.
Motion by Mr. Oakley. Second. Second. Second by Mr. Foster. Those in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay. Planning department updates, broadband, Mr. Oakley, any updates?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Specifically on broadband, I do not have any updates, but I will refer to Mr. Foster and Commissioner Ostriker if they have any updates.
I don't have anything. I tried to call the county manager and he hasn't called me back yet.
What I've seen is, once again, the build in, the build out is still progressing in that Stony Creek area primarily. They've signed, I believe they've signed 2 people up there. I know I put an address in for a lady. Yanceyville area. And put our address in and actually got to the next screen saying, tell us what you want. Sign up. So I sent that back to her. So they're moving along. I haven't had a meeting with them yet. But, I have no reason to believe they're not doing what they said they're gonna do.
I've put it to the test, signed up for Spectrum. They're supposed to install it on Thursday. It will increase my speed from current 6 megabit per second to 300 megabits.
Please tell us how it goes.
And the lower cost.
What road do you live on?
I'm on Main Road in the Anderson community.
I'm sorry, that's where she was. She's on 1305 Main Road.
Do you
That
mind,
was actually against-
you mind telling us how much cost you're doing next one?
The initial cost is $49, and I think there's some type of subsidy for some period of time. And then there's always the
The introductory rate,
There's
and then
always-
after
that's always
24
the
months.
introductory rate.
Yeah.
And once they get the hook in, increases in the coming year. So
It's 300 megs, the highest you get, you can get 1
you
gig.
can go up to like 1 gig if you want to, which is amazing for a rural section of Kansas.
That's great. And that introductory rate is $99. Wow.
So you could run some pretty intense business operation.
You can stream all the Caswell County planning board
I'm certain.
Yeah, I think the 300 goes up to like $75 after the 12 months.
Man, I can't remember, but I think your options are like 100, 300. Maybe there's another
It's 200.
200, 300, maybe there's another increment up to 1 gig.
And do you get television with that too?
That's another $50.
Yeah, they give you a free trial or something, but it's basically like streaming. If you have a smart TV, you can add a Spectrum app on your TV, and you basically can stream TV just like you're doing with like YouTube TV or something. So I can stream TV fairly well, 6 megabits per second, so. No buffering at 300.
You can also get cell.
Your cell phone service ain't that great in that area.
So we have very limited coverage. But yeah, they are still working throughout our area, still on 62 now, but pretty much completed.
When are they going to put that?
Thursday.
Congratulations. Thank goodness. You said that.
It's pretty weird, it's what I got in my shop. I've been here about 5 years. But I'm up next 87, coming out of the door. It's great.
You got Spectrum?
Yeah, I've been at Spectrum. Wow. 5 years I ran from off 87 down Cherry Grove Road. And stopped maybe 3 or 4 miles down Cherry Road, but they turned down Near Road where my shop is there.
All right, Mr. Hopeland, cell towers.
Yes, sir.
More applications coming up.
Well, let me get to that. First, I will show you the progress thus far. So this is photo 1 of the tower that's over in the Casville Ruffin area. Doug Parker sent this to me last week, middle of last week, I believe Wednesday or Thursday. And so it's, as you can see, it's essentially built now. They'll have to cap it off and then get the antenna up there, but the primary lattice structure is finished. Let's see here. Do I have? This is just some of the electrical components and generator facilities, more electrical components, and then a close-up of the generator. So in addition to the tower, obviously the necessary components are being installed as well. Then this is the Prospect Hill site. if anybody's driven past there in recent.
On the other one, do you know when it's gonna be finished?
I don't. I asked, but I did not get a response to that question specifically. I followed up with him yesterday via email, but I haven't gotten an answer back on that. So this is the Prospect Hill site. This photo was taken on July the 15th, as you can see at the top. And then similar to the last couple of photos, you got your electrical facilities going in as well. So I asked a couple specific questions to that end. I may have an email when I get back to the office today, but Mr. Oakley, you'd asked about 5G capabilities. I specifically asked about that. And I did not get a response. I got the pictures, which is great, but I didn't get a response to that. And then yesterday I asked about completion or installation of antennas, things of that nature, and I didn't get a response back on that either. So, you know, progress has been moving along, and obviously they're doing well with construction. So hopefully that's the case, and I'll do my best to get an answer before the next planning board meeting. But as of right now, I did not get a response from Mr. Parker. The other thing that I'll mention too, this is obviously very preliminary, but just yesterday I got a draft proposal for another 300-foot tower at the intersection of 158 East and Steventown Road over towards the Leesburg area. So it's just a draft proposal at this point. They would have to submit all the documentation as this applicant did. But I wouldn't be surprised if they move forward with that and you have that on your agenda, in the next few months.
Who makes the decision as far as where these towers are going? Do they just look at the red spots? Because I saw a lot of red spots, and that's like my biggest concern.
Yeah, I think, there's much more that goes into it than even I know about, but that topographical map that I showed gives you a good indicator.
Right.
I mean, I think they have data like that, probably far beyond the scope of what we ever see. They do engineering studies, they do an analysis of dropped calls in a given area or dropped calls as people are driving from point A to point B. And I think there's a number of factors that go into their analysis of where to put new towers. So, but obviously the coverage is the main thing. From what I understand, it's coverage and population density. And so obviously we have historically had poor coverage, but we haven't really had the population density to demand it. Now that they're anticipating all this traffic as a result of the casino, they're looking at population density, or at least pass through population. So Castle County residents will benefit, but it's more capturing that traffic, that anticipated future traffic.
Man, I don't know if you know this or not, but say like, is the tower on the County Home Road Verizon?
I'm not sure it is.
I thought it was. So would that take less pull off of that tower? So maybe, your service would be better? You're close,
Yeah, you're gonna have, the more towers you have, the better service that you have. Essentially, the way that I think of it is, like the old Tarzan show, as you're going along, you're on the one rope and you swing and you grab another one. And it's kind of like that as you drive from tower area to tower area. You're driving along and you're primarily on this tower, but as you get close to another one, there's kind of a blend, and then the other tower picks you up. So it's just like creating a net, the more towers that you have. I will say, Joe, I'm glad that you mentioned that. I have noticed since this application came through, they replaced the antenna at the North 86 tower just by the Providence Convenient Mart. And I saw cranes out there today replacing the antenna at the golf course. So I think these other antenna owners are going, oh, okay, we got some new equipment coming in. Let's try to beef up our signal on our towers. So the new towers are helping the.
what was the distance that we approved for in between towers?
Half a mile.
Half a mile.
And I could have sworn, I thought that all these towers were going to 5G, and they were shutting 3G and all that stuff down.
I would assume so, but I'm not sure. It depends on the signal strength of the line that's coming in. So if the only internet line that they have available to service a new tower is older, copper or whatever, that tower is only going to have so much strength. With Charter coming in, for example, providing a gig service, you can only assume that these towers are going to be 5G.
Because that's what the airports were having a problem with, that they were updating the 5G, and they weren't prepared. It was afraid that it was 3G was going to shut down.
Right. Yeah. So that's all I got on cell towers.
The generators that you were showing there, what is their fuel source?
It says diesel fuel only on the label there.
Okay. They got a diesel tank out or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Good to see that.
210 gallon capacity. Something says
The bottom of it is stone.
210 gallon capacity. All right. That's all I got on cell towers. I got a couple other quick updates.
Sure. When you get completion dates, would you go ahead and send those out?
Sure,
Not wait for the meeting?
I could do that, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, the proposed RV changes that were processed by the board and then went up to the commissioners were approved at the last meeting. Was it the July? I can't remember the date. That was the most recent meeting that they had. So RV parks are now allowed in flood zones throughout the county, obviously pending proper permitting. And then the last update that I have, Donnie can elaborate more on this if you'd like, but basically there was a more or less a consolidation of departments, you would say, for environmental health, building inspections and planning. And so I guess technically Donnie is my boss now. And so hopefully I'm doing okay.
That is correct.
But, so Donnie, I'll let you take it from here if you want to say a few words.
Yeah, so one of the things that
Yeah,
happened.
Mr. Powell.
One of the things that happened with transitioning, our chief building inspector is retiring. And Brian was a little concerned about, there's some disjointedness in our department because we have 3 different departments in one building, but like not one chief. Even Amy pretty much serves as a catch-all, do-all for everybody.
She's the real boss.
She is the real boss. So we have consolidated, at least from a management standpoint, the 3 departments, and I am now the central permitting director rather than environmental health director. So I'm moving out of my role, to environmental health. I'm still gonna be a 20% employee with the health department because legally I have to be able to still do anything environmental health. And so we wanted to kind of keep me on board. There's a few programs that I am the only person authorized in, and that is childhood led and daycares. So we're gonna need me a little bit in the program until we can get 100% up to par. But so I will be, that's the reason I'm here today. I will be somewhat trying to, Matthew does a great job. I'm not worried about being his boss, but I just want to be technical and management support for him. And also for building inspections and environmental health. So big change for me, but it also allows Brian to now just have a single liaison between him and the whole building. So that he doesn't have, 2 or 3 department heads that he has to deal with. He can just, deal with one. I'll be the one getting all the heads now, I guess.
So you're gonna hire someone else to take up your other 80%?
So Matt is going to transition into my role as the director. And we have Berkeley, who is our newest employee, who's absolutely amazing. And then we're going to try to hire in, hopefully, we're going to try to hire in a program specialist for our food and lodging program so that we have somebody that's already fully authorized coming in. I don't know if we'll be able to afford it, so we may not be able to, but regardless, yes, we will replace that position. We're already, if you look at the numbers, we're already severely understaffed. If you look at the fees that we took in this past year, our fees are only supposed to represent about 25 to 30% of our budget because we have so many unfunded mandates. This year, our fee intake was like $130,000. So our budget should be somewhere around 400, so $500,000, and we're operating on 200 and maybe $70,000 budget. So, if you look at it like that, me being that 20%, we'll be fine. We feel good about it. We'd love to be able to get somebody that's already fully authorized so they can hit the ground running though.
Well, congratulations, Mr. Powell.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. All right, Mr. Hoagland, any other updates?
That's all I got.
All right, great. That's good news about the broadband cell towers. So next, we have the adjournment. Just entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Here's aiming to adjourn. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye. Like sign. Adjourn. Thank you, everyone.